Hello everyone. Today I'm gonna make a very interesting video. It's a little different style from what I usually make. So I'm going to be live coding a Flutter app today. Now Flutter, I'll be explaining all about it, but it's going to help us use one single code base, write the code once, and we're going to be able to build two separate apps, one iOS app and one Android app. Both will exactly look the same, feel the same. If you want, we can obviously customize it, but it's better to have the same experience on both devices and both platforms. And that's what we're going to do. It's extremely simple, and I'm going to show you how to install it, how to get started and create your very first app right now. And I'm going to be doing it right along the way, as all my videos are. I usually never pause them, so at one stretch I'm not going to be looking at anything, just focusing on creating the app with you. So you can follow along. If you want to pause the video or slow it down, you can do that too. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up the browser, and any browser is fine. What I'm going to do is just search for Flutter, or you can go to Flutter's website. So it's flutter.dev. So you open it up over here, and you have a description over here. So as I said, it's going to help us build these mobile apps. It is developed by the team at Google, but it is open source, and it's a UI toolkit basically. And right now it also has support for creating web apps, websites, and desktop apps for Linux, Windows, and Mac OS, all from a single code base. And that's what makes this so powerful. Now, one thing I want to clear up is there are other technologies, for example, React Native or PWAs, for example, but these are all using web technologies. They're using JavaScript behind the scenes. Flutter is not like that. The Flutter code you write, the code is written in a language called Dart. This code is being compiled and converted into that native language for whatever platform, like for example, Java or Kotlin for Android. So this is much more performant, and it's going to help us build these amazing beautiful apps, and it's going to be very performant, as I said. So any animations transitions are going to be smoothly rendered at 60 frames per second. So we're going to get started with this. So you can click on the get started button, and then it takes you to the install page. So I'm recording this video on a Mac machine, but I've done it on Windows, Mac, and Linux. On all three operating systems I have used Flutter, and they work perfectly. So if you're on Windows, I'm going to quickly go over through the installation on everything. So just follow the instructions. They're actually quite simple. So you have the Flutter SDK. So you have a zip file which you can download by clicking on this button, and then you have the instructions. So where you extract the zip file and where you keep it. Generally, if you are on Windows, it's the C drive, src folder, and inside that Flutter. And then if you want, you could download it using from the GitHub repo, but I wouldn't recommend that. Just do install from the zip file. That's best. If you know what you're doing, then GitHub is fine. You can clone it. And then updating the path variable. This should be simple if you know how to update the path variable. There are other YouTube videos, so specifically go to YouTube and you can search how to update the path variable, and they have instructions here also. So once you're done with all this, you should be able to, from any place, open up the command prompt or open up the PowerShell, and you should be able to run Flutter Doctor. This is for all operating systems once you're done with this initial setup. And it should be able to run properly, and it'll show you what you have done right and what is missing. So for example, if you followed until now, the Android SDK, Android Studio, this will be missing. So it'll tell you to download it later. So that's your next step. So next you have to download and install Android Studio, and then you can start setting up your actual Android device. So that is the Windows setup. On Mac OS should be similar. Again, download the zip file, and then it'll tell you to extract your zip file and place it in a particular location anywhere you want. So here it tells you to put it in a folder called development in your home directory, and then again you have to update your path variable. So again, depending on your operating system, choose the it's best to search for videos or anything that might help you on how to update your path variable. Once you're done with that, again do Flutter Doctor and make sure this command works. So after that, this is just to update your path and then to install Xcode. Yes, for Apple, this is extremely important. You need to install Xcode. So they have some, so Apple, actually, it was a little tricky for me because I had tried to do this after getting the new M1 MacBook, and there was some things that just didn't work properly, so I had to come up with workarounds, but I finally got it to work. And the good thing is, I think Xcode you can actually install from the App Store. So you can go to the App Store and search for Xcode and just install using that. You don't have to actually go to the command line. So the instructions are that here, straightforward this. And then finally for Linux. So I'm not going to go over the Linux thing. I actually started using a Linux machine for my daily driver. I don't use anything else, and that also works fine. So once you're done with all of this, we can start. Now I'm just gonna make a quick pause, make sure I have everything set up, and then I'm going to start with the project. So I'm gonna get started right now, and I'm really not sure how this is going to go because there's been quite a big update for Flutter. The major update has come, and I don't think I've updated yet. So, and there might be a few breaking changes, but whatever it is. So, what I'm gonna do is I've opened up the terminal in on Mac. If you're on Windows, open the command prompt or PowerShell. If you're on Linux, open your terminal again, and just to show you, I'm going to run Flutter Doctor right now. Okay, so this looks like an Xcode issue. I think this happens, once in a while. Since I've not been using it, it should fix itself and start. Okay, so it has run, and so I've not installed Android Studio. I just wanted to keep this light, just work on the Flutter part, and Android. Anyways, I have another machine for that. I think Xcode has an issue because I've not used it recently. But again, I'm not going to. Yeah, we need Xcode actually. So I'm going to pause it and then make sure I have Xcode installed. I think it's uninstalled because of a storage issue. So once that's done installing, I'm going to resume that and run Flutter Doctor again just to make sure everything's working again. So I finally finished the update. It took a little while, so I started recording the next day. So Xcode is done installing. Now what I'm going to do is again open up the terminal, maybe open up a new session. For some reason didn't work with the same thing. And now I'm going to run Flutter Doctor. Now what happened was after I finished the update, I think I have a storage problem on my Mac. So the update and I think Xcode had got uninstalled due to the storage issues. So after you update, there are two commands that Flutter Doctor actually shows you. So even though you've updated it, you have to run some install commands, install some additional stuff. So when you run Flutter Doctor, it actually gives you the commands. So just paste in the commands and enter or make sure those two commands run, and then you should be ready. Open up a new terminal session and then run Flutter Doctor one more time. Now I'm on a Mac, so some stuff might be different. And as I told you, this is not my primary machine. I use before I used to use Windows. Now I use a Linux machine. So I didn't worry about installing Android Studio or the Android SDK. It's just for Xcode, just for iOS development. So it's going to show that it's not installed, so I don't have any problem. Xcode has to be installed. Again, Android Studio I said I don't need. And connected devices, they mean an Apple device. No, I don't use an Apple device regularly, but I have got my hands on one. This is an iPhone SE. Any latest iOS device should be fine with it, as long as it's it was made within the last 3 or 4 years. I think it's better if it's within 4 years, but it should work. So I am ready. Flutter Doctor says I am ready. So this is a command to you can run to make sure everything's fine. And if there's any issues, it'll tell you how to fix it and get ready. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cd into the desktop, change directories into the desktop. So I don't have any items. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to start my Flutter project inside that. Now I'm not sure of the exact command, but it is Flutter create. And if I'm right, you give the name of the project that you want. So I'm just going to call this Flutter tutorial, and then I'm going to hit enter. So what this is going to do is first create all the necessary files for you. So it should be ready pretty soon, because all it's doing is writing the files. So this is like your starter application. It adds all the files necessary and you can get started. So it comes with the sample project, which I'm going to run and show you, and then we can modify it from there. Now again, just to go through this list, it says Flutter is installed, Android toolchain we don't need to worry about, Xcode is there, Android Studio we don't need, connected devices if you want. But what I'm going to do is first I'm going to run the emulator and show it to you. So I'm just through the spotlight, I'm going to see if it's there. It's simulator, it's called the simulator on iOS. For Android, it's called an emulator. I'm going to run this, and I think this is open the iPhone 12 Pro Max. You should be able to see this. So let us start. This might take a while, and it's better if I have Visual Studio Code. I don't think I have it. So okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is download Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to go over to my browser, and I'm going to search. I'm going to type in visualstudio.com. So this is the website. So this is an editor. Some people call it an IDE, and this is what I'm going to use to write. Now, as you saw in that terminal window when I ran Flutter Doctor, it asked for Android Studio. Now, Android Studio can be used for everything. That is the preferred way to run Flutter apps, create Android apps. For most of this, for iOS, just if you're making a native iOS app, you will be using Xcode. But for Android and Flutter, Android Studio is the default and preferred way to do things. But that is especially for beginners not advisable completely, in my opinion, because it has so many things, so many features, and it's really overwhelming. Secondly, even if you know how to use Android Studio, the thing is, it does a lot of things behind the scenes for you. For example, if you want to refactor your code, rename something, there are a lot of changes you have to make. If you want to add a new feature, if you just use one of the features or tools on Android Studio, you're not going to know what happens behind the scene. And if you make a change, and if you just do through Android Studio, one of the plugins or one of the tools over there, and if something goes wrong, you're not going to know how to fix it, because you don't know what Android Studio has done behind the scenes for you. So I really recommend using something like Visual Studio Code, which does have a lot of features, but most of the stuff, it's going to be easier knowing what happens behind the scene. It's much more simpler in my opinion, and it's not as bare bones as something like Sublime Text or just Notepad. So, and this does come with a Flutter plugin and Dart plugin, so that it helps you with your syntax a little bit, and it cleans up your code. So that's going to be important. So I'm just going to go over here and click the download button. It should download quickly, and once it's done, we can start working, and the simulator should be ready. Okay, so this is the simulator. Now I'm just going to go through how the simulator works, let the download process get ready, and I'll also explain how the Android emulator works. So this is your simulator. This is like your own virtual iPhone, and you have different models. You can get an iPhone 12 Pro simulator, iPhone 13 when it comes, iPhone 11, the different sizes. You can even get an iPad, an Apple Watch. So this helps developers test their apps on different screen sizes, different devices, and helps them get it ready before you'd actually ship it out to production, put it on the App Store. So this is very important. Apart from this, you do have an option of connecting your device. So as I said, I have a iPhone over here. You could connect it to your Mac machine and run the app directly on the physical device if you want. That's an option. And apart from that, now if you have a Windows machine, even the Mac machine, any machine you can build for Android, it's iOS, it's Apple that's a problem. For Apple iOS devices, you need a Mac machine. That's the reason I actually bought this in the first place. So so for Android, you either download Android Studio here on your Mac machine, like what I'm doing, or you install it in a Windows machine or a Linux machine. And so for Android, you need Android Studio, and through Android Studio, there's something called an AVD manager. So you go through the full Android Studio setup, and then in the home page, there's going to be a settings icon. I'm not sure if I can show it to you. Maybe I could do a search. Screen. So there'll be a settings icon. I'm not sure if I can, it'll be there. So you click on that. Yes. So this is the home screen that you should be able to see. And then you click on the settings icon. It says configure over here. You click on that, and then there's something called AVD manager. Open up the AVD manager, and you're going to be able to see one device by default. If I'm right, the latest one is Pixel 4a or Pixel 3a. if you click on the play button, it's going to open up your Android emulator, the Pixel 4a or Pixel 3a, and it's going to run it just like I have my iPhone 12 Pro over here. So that's going to help you get your Android emulator ready, just like your iOS simulator. So that's going to help you build. Now the steps are exactly the same. There are definitely going to be differences. So what's happening is your Flutter code, as I'm going to show you, the Dart code is going to be converted to the Java or Kotlin. I think it's what is it? Forgot the name. So it's going to be converted to that whatever native code it is. And so there are, when you actually build the app and if you want to test it, there are going to be differences in the setup, and that's the later part. But apart from that, today what I'm going to show you is going to work whatever machine you have, and if you're using Android simulator or an Android emulator. So this is almost done, and once it's done, I'm going to resume. So the install is done. So I'm going to try and open up the application. Now the thing is, I don't know if it's ready for the actual M1 chip. So this is a universal application. It's meant to run both on the Intel architecture and the ARM architecture. So it's ready. Everything's fine. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the extensions tab and search for Flutter. There's an official Flutter extension that I'm going to install, and that's the very good thing about VS Code. It's got an extremely good community of extensions and plugins that you can install. So I think the Flutter is ready. So that's all good. Now I'm going to click open folder, and then in the desktop I have my Flutter tutorial. I'm going to open it up. That's the folder I created. That's my project directory. Gonna allow it. Okay, and then open this up in full screen. So what I'm going to do is first explain you what all these files are. So your readme file, if you use GitHub, you should know what this is. Every time you start any project like this, it's always good to have a readme file, because it's very common for multiple developers to be working on the same project, and it's good to explain how things work, what you need to do to get started. So this is the default readme file created by Flutter, and this uses a syntax called Markdown. Again, this is not a video about Markdown, but I'm just explaining this. For example, if you use one hash like this is the main first heading. Two hashes means it's like a subheading, the second heading. This is what you use for a link. So this is what is actually displayed, and this is the location of the link, the URL. So this is Markdown syntax. I'm not going to go in detail. Pubspec.yaml is like your main configuration for your Flutter project. It gives you your name, description of it, the version of Flutter you're using, the version of the app, and the version of the SDK you're using, all the dependencies you have to mention over here, and all the assets that you're going to use, static assets that you're going to use in a project. For example, any images, any fonts you're going to be using, all of those have to be mentioned in this pubspec.yaml file. So you don't need to touch any of this. Okay, all of this is good. Git ignore, again, if you're using version control, if you're familiar with GitHub, you should be knowing what this is. So these are all the files that version control should not track. Now the reason for this, for example, now there's going to be a build folder. Once I actually run my app, you're going to see a new folder over here called build, and it should show up over here somewhere. Yeah, so you see the build folder. So the build folder has a lot of stuff, so it's going to have your actual app. Now if you're developing an Android app, it's going to generate your app bundle and your APK file. Now when you're using version control and pushing this GitHub, getting the code back, you don't need to be sending that huge APK or app bundle every time. You can always regenerate it from the code you've written. So that's very inefficient. So what the git ignore file tells the version control, which is git, to do is ignore those folders and ignore those files, only track the other files. So even if you generate your APK, your app bundles, all those build files, it's going to ignore all of that. So similarly, there are a lot of other files which we're going to ignore, and that's what this .ignore file is for. Similarly, I'm going to ignore the test folder. That's out of the scope of this video. That's to test your application. The lib folder is where we're going to be working, and main.dart is the entry point of our application. Now similarly, I'm going to just show you iOS is where your iOS code is going to live. We're not going to touch it. We're using Flutter, not any of the actual iOS stuff. So we're not going to touch iOS. Similarly, we will not touch Android. We are using Flutter to make sure we have a single code base. So let's get into the actual Flutter code. Now what I'm going to do is this is all the app. So you see 118 lines, but most of it is comments. If you remove all these comments, there's literally nothing. So I'm going to remove all these comments. So you use a comment by using two slashes, as you see over here. Those are we don't need those. It's just to explain what the code actually does, and it's actually very less. So if you remove all of this, it's actually very less, and the first application is quite simple. So the reason I'm anyways going to delete the entire thing. I just want to show you what you get with this default application. So I've deleted everything. I'm going to save this, and on the bottom you should be able to see either no devices or whatever device is connected. Right now I see the iPhone 12 Pro Max selected, and that's good. If you're using any other machine or a Mac itself, depends on what device you're using. Right now I'm using a iOS simulator. That iOS simulator has to be selected. If you're using an Android emulator, make sure that particular device is selected. If you're connecting a physical device, whether it's Android or iOS, make sure that device is selected, or else go over there, select it. And then there's also an option to create an Android emulator. So whatever it is, you have to make sure it's selected. So beforehand, make sure that device is set up. So I finished the setup and it's selected, so I'm all good. Now I'm going to go over it and click the play button. So either you click run, or there's another option, you just do Flutter run from the command line. But this is just a beginner's tutorial, so I'm going to just use the button and I'm going to run it. Now the first time it is going to take a lot of time, so it has to build your file, build the code. So it is going to take a while, so maybe I'll pause the video and then continue once it's done. So usually it says building Gradle file or whatever for Android. Since it's for the iOS simulator, it's saying running Xcode build. So one thing that you're going to realize when if you actually are serious into this Flutter development is, when you actually run the code, when you're just testing it at one device, you want to make sure a particular feature or a particular design works. There's not much of differences. You're going to be easily be able to work on it. But the moment you want to actually get it for production, or if you want to use a third-party plugin, then there's going to be differences from iOS and Android. So you have to make sure you do an Android setup and then an iOS setup. So that's why generally people don't like they like Flutter a lot, and it helps them because it's just one code base. But you still have an issue of doing separate setup for both platforms, because the way each thing works is completely different. So that's important to know. And if you have any problems with the emulator or the simulator, one thing to do is connect an actual device. So you should be having some smartphone, whether it's a iOS device or an Android device, whatever it is, connected to your device, and maybe use that, because the emulator or simulator might take a toll on the graphics power of your computer. So it might make your computer slow or prevent you from doing stuff fast enough. So connecting an additional device might help you. Okay, so I finally got it to work. So the problem was, just an issue with my Macs. Mac OS has some kind of limitation of the number of files open, and I think there was an update going on. So for some reason, it wasn't building, but I finally got it to run, and I didn't use the play button. I just made sure my simulator was open and working, and then I just ran Flutter run from the command line. So you should be able to see it over here. All I did was run Flutter run, and then it started running. So the output's going to look different, because depending on what exact device you're using, or if you're trying to run on the Android emulator instead of the iOS simulator. But it's working right now, and I've opened up the app on the app automatically opens up on the simulator. So this is our demo app. So it uses Google's material design. That's the default for Flutter. You can obviously use iOS styled widgets, or make your own your complete customized widgets or UI elements for the app. And this is a simple counter app. So as I click on this button, you can see that this counter increases. Simple app. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear the entire thing and explain the fundamental concepts of Flutter and how you can actually get started. So as you see over here, so the main thing is you have to import the material package from Flutter. Just add the statement at the top. Even if you don't add it, you're going to get this small suggestion to add it anyways. And then you have this main function. You say void main. The return type is void. That's why you have void. So you're basically not returning anything. And then you say run app, and then you pass in myapp. So this myapp is a class, and you see it says extend stateless widget. So the fundamental concept in Flutter is everything is a widget. So your entire app is a widget. Inside your app, you can have a button widget, an image widget, a text widget maybe. Maybe you want to, in a line, vertically, you want to mention the user's profile picture and then the user's name and then maybe a button to log out. So what you can do is inside your main app widget, you can have a column widget, and then the column widget has a properties called children, which expects an array or list of widgets. So you can pass in as an array a list of widgets. What are the widgets? Maybe you can provide an image widget for the first one. Then the next one in the list can be a text widget, and then finally a button widget. So this is what you can do in Flutter. So I'm going to show you. So this run main and then run app my app. This is like your entry point to the application, and we're starting with a stateless widget. So there are two main types of widgets in Flutter: stateless widgets and stateful widgets. So to understand this, you have to understand what state basically means. So in any type of app or web app, whatever it is, you have a concept called state. So the current state of the app. Now, if you're implementing some app which requires a user to log in, maybe a logged out state could be one state, a logged in state could be another one, and then maybe a loading screen or something that could be the third state. So you have three different states for your app. So every time your state changes, for every state you want your app to look differently. That's the reason you have stateful widgets and stateless widgets. So stateless widgets means that once your the Flutter app, once it's built and once the UI is displayed, it's never going to change. It doesn't have state that is going to update the UI. That is what a stateless widget means. But a stateful widgets means for those type of widgets, you can define variables, and those variables are basically your state. So it can be asked, for all this you need to have a basic understanding of programming. So the variable, you can assign anything. It can be a number, it can be a string, whatever. Now you can update this variable, and there's a thing in Flutter called set state for stateful widgets. So every time you want to update the UI, you want to update how your app looks. Now I'm going to show you how this actually works. So I'm going to show you this demo, for example. Now when I click the button, what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen for a button click. Every time I click on the button, there's already a variable that is storing the number 7 over here. So when I click on this, what I want to do is I want to get the value of that variable and add 1. And then I want to update the state. So I'm calling a function. I'm saying, please update the state now. So I can update a variable whenever I want, but it's not going to update the UI. Visually, you're not going to see any difference, even though the value of the variable has been updated. I hope this makes sense, and I'm going to show it to you anyways. So what's happening is, one more time to recap, I'm clicking on a button. When I click on this button, the first thing I'm going to do is going to update the variable. So if it is 7, I'm going to increment it by 1, get the value, add 1. So the variable is updated, but I still won't be able to see any difference. Visually, the UI has not been updated. So I have to manually say set state, and I have to update the variable. So I have to update the state. I need to update the UI. That is something that is unique to Flutter and for other technologies, and I'm going to be showing you how to do this properly right now. So we have my app, and then this returns something called a material app. So I'm going to keep this like this. I'm going to delete everything below that. So okay, so we have my app, which is a stateless widget. That is our app itself, and our app itself is a widget in Flutter, right? And what we're going to do, so it has a title called Flutter demo. I'm going to leave it like that, doesn't really matter. And then this is again the theme. So what you can do is beforehand itself, you can assign different colors, different designs related to your theme. All the information, you can define it before itself, and you can reuse them. You don't have to keep typing out the colors or any other information as you go into your app. So that is the theme. Not going to get into that. And then the home is again like your starting point. What is the main widget you're going to show inside? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first create a stateless widget. So because I'm using VS Code and I'm using the Flutter extension, I'm going to type STL, and then you have two options here: Flutter stateless widget, Flutter stateful widget. This is going to generate some boilerplate code for us, and I'm going to click on stateless widget. Then I'm going to type in the name of my widget, and I can call this anything. Just make sure it's in it's not camel case, right? But make sure that the first letters of all your words start with the capital letter. That's usually how classes are defined. So I'm going to call this home page. You can call it anything you want, and you can see that it says widget build. So there's a build method, and then it's returning a container. Now what is a container? Container is another widget. It's just a container, right? You can mention the width of the container, the height of the container. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to return a scaffold. This is a material design thing, if I'm right. And inside the scaffold, so if you hover over it, you can see the different properties. I'm going to say app bar, and then I'm going to give it an app bar widget. And then the app bar widget, I think it has a title property. The title is a string, or yeah, no, so it needs a text widget. So the title is again expects a widget. I'm going to pass in a text widget for the title, so like this. And then I'm going to say maybe welcome to my app, right? And then so I'm going to leave it like this. Let's see what happens. And you end everything with a semicolon. That's why you see this red squiggly line. So that's the app bar. And then I think it has a body. Yes, so it has a body property, and inside this body property I'm going to show you what I said earlier, a column widget. So maybe let's add a column widget like this. I'm going to hit tab, and then the column widget is has a children property. And the children property, I think if you hover over this, you could see it. It expects a list of widgets. So again, a list, you write it with these square brackets, and then you can list the widgets inside of this. So the first widget I'm going to show you is a text widget, which I've already done once already for the title. And I'm just going to say home page over here. Okay. And then next I'm going to maybe add a row widget. So just like a column widget, the row widget. So the structure is a column widget, inside the column widget, a text widget on top. Then next I'm going to have a row widget, right? And then the row widget, again, it's going to take a children property. And then the children, let's add two pieces of text. I'm going to say hello. And then so there's this thing called a box widget. So usually size box widget can be used for different purposes. Usually I do this to create spacing between my elements. So I'm going to add another, so size box, and then after that another text widget. And I'm just going to put my name over here. So let me just show you what happens without the size box widget, right? So I have two text widgets inside the row widget, and finally to finish this I'm going to add a button. So there are a lot of types of buttons over here. I think I'm gonna go with the flat button for now, and then it has this on pressed property. I'm just going to keep an empty function for this. Let's not worry about how we react to the button press. And the child is going to be what you actually want to show inside the button. So again, it's going to be a text widget. You can also show images, you can also show icons, completely up to your imagination, and I'll show you how to do that. So again, a text widget, I'm just going to say click maybe. Okay, and let's something's wrong right now. Yeah, oh, so this part is done, and this home page widget that we have created, I'm going to pass this in as our home. Okay, I think we're done. So I hope this code makes sense, and maybe what I'll do is I'll push this to GitHub and I'll put the link in the description so you can follow along, and you can clone the repository, run it again and try it out if you run into any issues. So this is the next cool part about Flutter. This is what makes the development experience so good. Now I'm going to save this, and there's hot reload in Flutter. So I think the problem is I'm using the terminal. There's some kind of error. See what happens if I type R. Okay, cool. So it actually worked. So I restarted it and instantly I see the changes. So this is exactly what we've done. So I've done a scaffold. So the reason I did a scaffold is it gives us a lot of options so that we can quickly get an app that looks good. So in our scaffold, we have an option to give an app bar. So I just said app bar widget, title, and then gave it a text. Automatically it looks really good. It identifies, so for example, some devices have a notch, some devices don't have a notch. Regardless of that, it neatly adds this background image and this slight shadow, if you can notice it, and adds our text over here. Default is a blue color, we can change it over here. Primary swatch says colors.blue, we can change it, and it looks really good. Like the scaffold part of it, the app bar looks good, and the body which comes under the app bar, which is the main part of our app, I said first put a column widget. So that means all the children, it's going to be listed vertically. So that's happened. So I can see my home page, then I can see hello Aditya, and then I can say my button, which is click. Now this doesn't look like a button, we're going to change it, but I can click on it, and you can see if I click, I can see some kind of color over here. So everything seems like it's going good. Now, what I'm going to do is show a small change in the column widget. So in a column widget, the main axis alignment is this vertical. So the column is basically vertical and a row is horizontal, right? So when you say main axis alignment, that means you're talking about the vertical axis. Okay, main axis alignment is a property. But what if you notice this hello Aditya is on the left side of the page. I want this centered. Now this is talking about the cross axis alignment because the column is vertical. That is the main axis. I want in the cross axis, I want everything centered. So I'm going to go over and type cross axis alignment, and I'm going to say cross axis alignment dot centered. Save this, go back. I think I have to hit R to do a hot reload. So that works. Now I'm going to hit R and do the hot. So it doesn't seem like it's updated. Hmm. So that's for the column. I think so. Similarly for the column. So for a column, we need to adjust the cross-axis alignment. Now similarly for the row, let's change the main axis alignment. Now I think now the difference should be clearer. So for the column, it was the cross axis alignment. For the row, it's a main axis alignment. And here also, I'm going to center it. Save this and hit R again. Yes, so we've centered this also. Now, if you notice, there's no space at all. I used a row. I could have just typed hello Aditya in, with one text widget, but I specifically separated it and I want it to be separated. So now what I'm going to do is there are different ways to separate it. Generally, for simple stuff, I use something called a sized box. It's a different type of widget. And what I'm going to do is give it a width of 10, 20 maybe. Save this, hot refresh or hot reload, and I have a space of 20 pixels. Everything looks fine. Now I'll show you how to customize a text widget. So I'm just going to say comma style property, and then it's going to ask a text style widget. So even to give a style, it expects a style widget. Inside this, I can change stuff like the font size. It's supposed to be a float. I don't know what it's. Okay, it's called a double, and then maybe let's say 24, and then um, font style dot italic maybe. Save this, reload. Okay, so that was the main thing. So I think it's increased in size. I don't know if you've noticed. Let's make it maybe 40 to see the difference, and then reload. Yeah, so you see it's much more bigger and it's italic, so it works. Let me bring it back to maybe 24. And so you can do this for any of them, and maybe for the flat button I'll show you how to customize it. Um, oh, what properties do we have that we can actually change? So it has a text color and then a color property. I'm just going to change the color property. I'm going to say colors dot. Now these are material design colors. So all the different shades, everything, they're all material design colors. And I'm going to show you how to even pick the colors. Now, for example, I decide I want a blue color. I'm going to say blue, and then I can put this brackets, and then when I hover over it I can see all these shades over here. So that's very cool. These are all shades depending on the material design, and maybe I'm going to go for this 400 shade. Save it, reload. So I can see that the color has changed and it's blue in color. I can change the text color also by saying text color, and then again this is going to expect colors. Maybe I'll say colors dot white. Save it, and I keep hitting R over here to reload, but you don't need to do that. If you directly click play over here, it uses the Flutter extension, so that's helpful. And yeah, as I said, the color changed, so you have it's the text is white in color now. So that really, I think this wraps up the main parts of the video, because this was meant to be an introduction to Flutter, how you can actually get things started and working. And I hope you understood the basic idea of how Flutter works. Maybe one thing I can do is show you how a stateful widget works. Now, because whatever happens right now, if I want to do something by clicking on this button, I won't be able to update the UI. Nothing's going to change because I'm using a stateless widget right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this to a stateful widget and show you how to do that. So you see this this bulb icon. I'm going to click on this and say convert to stateful widget. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable. I think here should do. I don't remember exactly where. So let's create a variable called maybe logged in. Just call it logged in and set it false. So we have a variable, and what I'm gonna so it's a stateful widget, and what we can do is you have the flat button, and let's change the variable every time we press it. So on pressed, what I'm gonna do is say call something. So before that, let me just show you what happens. So the variable is called logged in, and I'm going to set this to not logged in, so the opposite of logged in, right? And I'm going to maybe what I can do is after I change it, I'm going to print to the console. So in the terminal, I'm going to print the value of that variable. Let's save this, reload. Okay, now let this, I don't know if this output is ever going to stop, but if I click on this, can you see it just keeps going up, but every time I click on this, you should see Flutter something says false. Now it says true. I click it again, it says false. I click it again, it says true. So you see it keeps changing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with this. Now instead of saying home page at the top, see, you see this text widget says home page. What I'm going to do is I'm going to write a ternary expression. I don't know if you're familiar with this from the if you've done programming already, you might know. So I'm going to say logged in and then put this question mark. So if I am logged in, I want to display my name, hello Aditya, or something, or welcome. Let's just say welcome, right? And then I'm going to put a colon over here, and then I'm going to put another string. Now I'm going to say please log in. Okay, so you, depending on the value of this logged in variable, if the logged in variable is true, I want to say this, I want my text widget to say welcome. If I'm not logged in, I want my text widget to say please log in. Okay, and we already know that every time we click our button, the value of the logged in variable keeps alternating, true false, true false. So but the way this works, the way we want it to work, is every time we click on the button, the text has to change. So that's how it should work. Let's see what happens. Now I'm going to hit R, reload it, and then I'm going to come back. Now it says welcome. Let's click on it. So it says false, true, false, and then true, but the text never updates. The text is always welcome. This is why I said we need a stateful widget. The same thing would have happened if we use a stateless widget. In stateless widgets, we can also use variables, but there's no point. Like, you can use variables to initialize a widget, to create an initial state, to create an initial UI and look and feel, but you won't be able to update that UI. If you want to update the UI, you have to use a stateful widget, and we are not using the power of the stateful widget yet, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So here, when we update our variable, we have to do this inside something called set state. So we call set state like this. It takes another function, and we need to update our variable inside of this. Only then are we going to be able to update the state. So what happens is we update the variable, and then Flutter re-updates the UI, it rebuilds the widgets and rebuilds the UI. This has to happen, and we have to be very efficient of this. We can't just be calling set state everywhere. We usually call set state at the very end, and we need to be efficient about this because it requires memory, it requires compute power every time you need to rebuild the UI. So your application has to be as performant, as smooth as possible. So be wise about how often and how you use set state. So now I'm going to save it and reload the application, and now it says welcome. Hopefully if I say click, it says please log in, welcome, please log in, welcome. So we successfully created the stateful widget also. This is exactly what the previous demo app was doing, but what they actually did was they had a number, the variable stored a number, and they incremented the number. Instead of that, I had a boolean and I flipped the boolean. I flipped the value of the boolean every time I click the button. So exactly what they did, and you have actually a pretty good looking UI. All you have to do is change the font, make the font bigger, position it. So using columns, so basically you can have this grid like UI. The good thing is if you're interested in app development, there's not a lot of screen sizes. There are different screen sizes, but not as many as when developing a web app. So you can use this kind of grid UI. So you can plan out your app and you can create like this grid system, and you know where to position all the items, all the elements. So you can use combinations of columns and rows to create your UI, and it's quite simple actually. I created my first app in maybe 3 hours, 4 hours. I just sat in one stretch, and through watching a lot of YouTube videos, I struggled a lot to get the initial setup ready. But once I was done, I just started building, I just started exploring. And this hot reload is really a game changer. It's what sets Flutter apart from all the other technologies. It helps you quickly build your app and test it and debug it. So it's really cool. So I hope that this video has been very helpful. That's all for this video. It was a beginner introduction video to help you get set up and show you how Flutter actually works. I hope you learned something from this video, and if you have any questions, if you want to see future videos on Flutter, any advanced concepts, want me to build something completely in more depth, please let me know in the comments and I'll try to do that. And if you like this video, I would appreciate it if you could like it and subscribe to my channel. So once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.